The words hit her harder than any slap. "You are not needed as my wife." He said it the way men like him said everything, without emotion, without pause, as if dismissing a servant who had overstayed her usefulness. The chandelier above them glowed like frozen fire, reflecting off marble floors polished by fear and obedience. She stood still, hands folded, refusing to give him the satisfaction of a reaction. If he noticed the slight tremor in her fingers, he pretended not to. He was the boss of the city's most feared mafia syndicate, a man whose name was spoken only in whispers. Tonight, he wore power like a tailored suit, black, flawless, untouchable. To him, this marriage had always been a strategic move, a signature on paper, nothing more. He turned away from her and picked up a folder from the desk, already thinking of the next threat, the next deal, the next betrayal to crush. What he never bothered to understand was how closely she had been watching him all these years. She remembered the nights she sat in silence beside him while he spoke on coded calls, the way numbers changed in his voice when money moved, the names that returned too often to be trusted. She learned not by asking, but by listening. Not by power, but by patience. While he ruled with violence, she ruled with memory. Every secret account, every hidden route, every quiet weakness, she stored them carefully, like weapons no one knew she carried. "You'll leave tonight," he added, his back still turned. "Take what you want. The car will be waiting." She almost smiled. Take what you want, as if everything that truly mattered wasn't already inside her mind. She walked toward the door slowly, each step echoing in the vast room. This mansion had never been her home. It was a fortress built on blood and arrogance, and she had survived it by becoming invisible. At the door, she paused, not to beg, not to plead, but to look at him one last time. He didn't turn. He didn't need to. He believed the world bent to him because it always had. Outside, the night air felt sharper, cleaner. The city lights stretched before her like a living map, every street a memory, every shadow a reminder of what he had underestimated. As the car pulled away, she allowed herself one deep breath. This was not an ending. It was a release. Behind those walls, the boss poured himself a drink, convinced he had cut away dead weight. He had no idea that the woman he had just dismissed was the silent spine of his empire. And when the ground beneath him finally began to crack, when enemies closed in and his power started to bleed away, he would remember this night too late, realizing that the one person he had cast aside was the only one who truly knew how to save him. The collapse didn't come with an explosion. It came quietly, the way real disasters always do. One morning, a shipment failed to arrive. By evening, 2 trusted men were unreachable. By nightfall, the numbers on his private screen refused to move, frozen as if the city itself had turned its back on him. The boss stood alone in his office, staring at a map that had once obeyed his will. For the first time in years, it felt unfamiliar. He ordered meetings. No one spoke freely. Eyes shifted. Phones stayed face down. Loyalty, he realized, had grown thin in his absence of fear. Someone was pulling strings behind the curtain, cutting veins he hadn't even known existed. A rival family claimed territory without firing a single bullet. Banks delayed transfers. Safe houses went dark. It was elegant, precise, personal. By the 3rd day, he knew the truth he had been avoiding. This wasn't an attack from outside. It was an unraveling from within. He slept in short bursts, gun within reach, mind racing through every face he had ever trusted. Names surfaced, again and again, but none fit perfectly. Then, without warning, another name appeared, hers. It came with a memory he had dismissed too easily. Her quiet presence, her questions that sounded harmless, her habit of remembering details others forgot. He slammed his fist against the desk, anger rising, not at her, but at himself. The trap closed faster after that. A meeting location was compromised. An informant vanished. A message arrived with no signature, only coordinates and a time, daring him to show up. He did, because fear had never stopped him before. This time, it nearly ended him. Gunfire shattered the night. Concrete dust filled the air. He escaped through a service tunnel with blood on his sleeve and certainty in his chest. Someone had studied him deeply. Someone who knew how he thought. By dawn, there was no one left to call. He found her in a place untouched by his world. A small cafe near the river, sunlight cutting clean lines through glass and steam. She looked different, lighter, as if the weight he carried had never been hers to begin with. She noticed him immediately, not with shock, but with understanding. As though she had known this moment would come. He sat across from her without asking. The man who once commanded rooms now chose his words carefully. "They're tearing everything apart," he said. "You know how." She stirred her cup slowly, unafraid. "I warned you," she replied softly. "You just never listened." Silence stretched between them, heavy with history. He wanted to demand help. Instead, he spoke the truth he had buried beneath power. "I can't stop it without you." She met his gaze then, and he saw something new, not love, not revenge, but clarity. In that moment, he understood the balance had shifted. The empire still existed, but its center no longer belonged to him. And for the first time in his life, the boss waited for an answer he could not command. She didn't answer right away. The city moved around them, cups clinked, footsteps passed, life continued, while the most powerful man in the criminal world waited like an ordinary mortal. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, stripped of emotion. "I will help you," she said, "but not as your wife, and not as your shadow." His jaw tightened, yet he nodded. He had already lost the right to negotiate. From that moment, the game changed. She didn't raise her voice or threaten anyone. She simply began making calls. Names were spoken that no one else dared to remember. Accounts reopened, traps reversed, and alliances shifted overnight. She exposed the traitor not with violence, but with precision, leaking just enough truth to turn conspirators against each other. While men prepared guns, she moved information, and information proved deadlier. The ambush plan for the boss was rerouted. The rival families walked into each other's lies. Evidence surfaced in the hands of authorities who had been waiting for the right push. Within 48 hours, the city's balance snapped back into place. Not through fear, but through inevitability. The empire stood again, cleaner, sharper, and undeniably different. They met one last time on a rooftop at dawn. The skyline burned gold and gray, a new day indifferent to old sins. The boss looked smaller without the chaos surrounding him. "Come back," he said quietly. It wasn't an order, it was a plea, raw and unguarded. "Stand beside me, rule with me." She stepped closer, close enough for him to see the truth in her eyes. "I already did," she replied. "And you told me I wasn't needed." The words cut deeper than any betrayal. He reached for her hand, then stopped himself. Power had taught him to take. Loss had finally taught him restraint. He understood now that saving something didn't mean owning it. She turned away, the morning light catching her hair as the wind rose. Every step she took felt deliberate, free. Behind her stood a man with everything he had ever wanted: control, fear, loyalty, and none of what he needed. He watched until she disappeared down the stairwell, knowing she would never look back. The city would remember him as a legend, a boss who survived every war. But in the quiet spaces where truth lived, he would remember himself as the man saved by the one person he failed to value. And somewhere beyond his reach, she walked into a life that no longer required permission, having proven that she was never just his wife. She was the reason he lived to see another sunrise.